Hey, it's Recovery This Week. I'm Damon Frank.
And I'm Shauna McKenna Vick.
Yes, you are Shauna McKenna Vick. How you doing?
Um, it's been a busy week, Damon. I've been visiting treatment centers and new clients. There's a lot of people who really need help and need help figuring out where they're going to go, what they're going to go, families calling. So it's been a busy week. I have some very clients in desperate situations, so we're getting them help, and that's been keeping me on my toes. How about you? What's
Recovery.
going on with you? We've missed
Re-
this for 2 weeks
I
because the two
know
of us have just been going crazy.
it's been crazy, and we promise audience that we will make sure to be more consistent about this. Summer is tough, obviously, with schedule. I've got the kid home from college. We're just doing a ton. I was just telling you, transportation's been crazy because everybody's going here and there. So, good. Recovery never sleeps, though. I think the last we talked, Sean, the last episode we did, not when you were in Ireland, but the other one with Recovery This
Hmm.
Week, we were talking about biospirituality and we were talking about plugging in. Those were the two things that I know we
Right.
wanted to give
Right.
everybody an
Plugging in. And
update
they
on.
fit together, Damon, because biospirituality is plugging into your body. And you were talking about plugging into recovery and going back to some finding a new tribe, not tribe, but
Yeah,
finding a new group, checking out new groups. How's that going? That was one of the commitments you made on this, is that you were going to start going back. How's that going?
it was. And one of the hesitancies of doing the show was actually talking about my own recovery. And I know
Yeah.
you and I both do that on this. I like the word tribe you used. I actually think it is kind of a tribe.
Hmm.
I plugged in, it was weird going to back to some of the meetings that I used to go to. I'm not gonna lie. Um I've noticed I've changed a lot. I think maybe just because I'm an old grumpy white guy.
Hmm.
Um I sometimes just like to sit there and listen, and
Sure.
I have an urge to participate sometimes, but I sometimes stop myself because I think I personally get more out of just listening a lot of the times to other people than I do, especially new people in recovery. Because I got to be honest, Shauna, when you've been sober, when I'm going like 32 years in like a month or two, you forget a lot about, I mean, you don't forget the big stuff, but you forget
Hmm.
the nuances
Right.
of the struggles of getting sober. It wasn't easy. You know what I mean? So it's good in that sense. And yeah, I think I found that tribe. I'm plugged in. Shout out to the men's group Wednesday night meeting here in the Valley. If anybody's listening, you'll be seeing me next week. So yeah, that's what's been going on with me.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit, Damon, because I can really appreciate what you said, that you go and you listen to the newcomer and you hear the nuances and you forget about what it was like in early recovery. So I heard you. But the gift of being in a group, in a 12-step group, is that someone with experience sharing helps the newcomer. So we don't just go to meetings. And I know that's not your intention by any means. You will share when it's appropriate, whatever. But I think there are people who go to meetings just to take. Well, we have to give too. And sometimes, and I'm not saying this for you, but I know sometimes people don't share because they don't want to share that they're having challenges in a relationship or having challenges here or this, or they're not working part of a solution to help them get better. They're just sitting in their stuff. And so they sit and they listen, and it can be a pride thing to not share in a meeting. Whereas, when we share our experience, hey, this is what was going on with me. And, I live these 12 steps, and I realize that, talking with a sponsor, whatever, I'm able to figure this out. And this was the result. That's the message of hope, right? That we can live our life on life's terms, by using the principles of the program. So that's not your intention, but I understand where you're coming from because you're just getting plugged in again. You want to hear the stories. You want to hear what's going on with other people. You want to be reminded of those early days. And you have a lot to offer. So
Oh,
I would
thank you.
not want you listening every week.
I
For
do
sure.
participate. What's interesting? I want to talk about this before we dive into this biospirituality, which I want to hear all about. Uh, it's interesting you say that because my relationship with 12-step groups, especially in, I would say, the past 5 years, 7 years, was being actively involved, actively, doing treasury, making sure the meetings didn't fall apart, being on committees. And honestly, I burnt out a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And I one of the things that I've realized too about, I kind of have a leadership. I'm a business person. We were talking business right before we started this, right? So I have kind of, okay, this is how we're going to solve it mentality. And
Correct. Yes.
I
I
found
can
that
relate to
was hurting.
that.
That was hurting my sobriety a little bit, that I wanted to be, not to not participate. I do, but like I wanted to be one of many. I wanted to just be another guy in the chair going to the meeting, not necessarily being on the committee, doing that, right? Like I wanted to have that experience. And I found the last time, going to several meetings a week, being uberly involved with one group was distracting me from my own progress on things a little
Yes.
bit. So I
Yes.
found
Because
that
you're so
mixing that
focused on
up,
things outside as opposed
yeah,
to things internal.
always dealing with the crisis of the group kept me from really being able to also work on my sobriety. And I think it's both. I'm very big into services, I want to
Hmm.
help, but I also need places I can go where I can just be one of many, right? Just one of many. And I would say that to everybody out there, of somebody who's gone through the gamut of not participating at all in AA, which is not good at all, and then over participating. You have to find that kind of middle. And maybe there's some meetings you just go to that you don't have, that you have nothing to do with the leadership part of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. That's why we have the spirit of rotation, right? People are supposed to rotate out so that that everybody has a chance to do the things, but also not always be in those leadership roles because we're trusted servants. So I think, we talk about unity, service, and recovery as our mainstays. Recovery is the bottom. So we always put um our own recovery first. So if not being in a leadership role or in a service position is what you need right now, you got to really listen to yourself and your own spirituality so that you're continuing to grow and expand your spiritual life,
Yeah.
which is what I did when I went to Ireland. That was one of my things, was to go on retreat to Ireland. And we
Right.
went to a retreat center up in, so you see how I'm segueing into biospirituality now, Damien, did you
Way
like
to
that?
go. Way to
Thanks.
go. It's like you're
I could
ripped
be
from
on,
the
I could be
headlines.
on a podcast or something. Like I'm getting good at this. So we were supposed to do a 12-step retreat. It's called a Matt Talbot retreat. And the facilitator hadn't done one of those before. And here's a man, he's a priest, and he's been a priest for a long time. And he worked 30 years in Nairobi and Kenya and Namibia in drug and alcohol, programs. For 30 years, he worked with drug addicts and alcoholics over there in these programs, helping them get help and things. So he was the facilitator of our retreat. And he said, what would you think of if I just facilitated the retreat on and did some more on the biospirituality? Of course, we were open to anything. Here's 8 women from the US saying, yes, let's do it. And so I had never heard the term biospirituality before. Have you ever heard of it?
I had not. I've heard of biohacking. I've heard of bioengineering. I've heard of all this stuff, but not, no,
Right,
not
not
that, not biospirituality.
biospirituality. And really what it is, and I'm no expert, I'm just starting down the path. I got the book, I've attended a couple listening sessions. I'm certainly no expert. But what it is really getting in touch with your felt sense. Your body knows. It's almost like bringing mindfulness into your spiritual life and really I mean, mindfulness is very spiritual anyway, but being super mindful of your body and what your body's trying to tell you and listening to it. So if you're in your meditation and you've slowed down and you've got, some heaviness in your heart, what's it really saying to you? And being quiet and doing that. And, I have found that I have a hard time accessing my feelings. I keep a lot of stuff up in my head. I work through things. I'm very logical. If, I recently had a death in the family. My sister-in-law passed. I kept it up here. I haven't even had a good cry about it because I said I'm not ready to, and I'll do it. So I know that that's being held somewhere, and I will take the time to get that. But it's very somatic. It's very much getting in touch with your felt sense. So just a quick example of it is if you close your eyes and you pictured that you were going to meet up with a friend you hadn't seen in a long time and you're just anticipating that, just thinking about that right now, I can feel the response in my body. It's like these flutters right here on my chest, in my heart space, right? Like I would really be looking forward to that. And then sitting with that feeling and understanding what that's trying to tell you, and then being able to recognize that. So that's a good feeling. But a lot of us have trauma, a lot of sad feelings, anger, whatever. And where does it show up in the body? I know for me, stress shows up in my neck. So, listening to that, breathing into it, speaking into it, acknowledging it, sensing it. And so as I learn more, I will get more into the biospirituality. But on the flip side of that example I gave you about the excitement, now think of someone who you may have a fractured relationship with, who you aren't in contact with, who may have hurt you in some way. And you know that you're going to see them at this upcoming wedding. It's committed that you're both going to be there. Now, where do you feel that? Right? I feel that down in my stomach, like this gut punch of, ugh. And it flows out through my body. So it is interesting. So, but spending time with that feeling, acknowledging it, giving it a name, and being able to, release it too, right? And get the direction and the guidance. And so again, I am no expert, but there's a biospirituality institute that's out in California. I'll have to come out and do one of their retreats, Damon, and I'll get to see you then, of course,
Yeah,
because you're on the West Coast.
absolutely. You know what? It's weird when you say this because I think maybe, Shauna, I've been doing this biospirituality for decades. You know what it reminds me of? This is just, and I'm sure that there's more intricacies to this, but
Mhm.
what it reminds me of is the awareness game, like being aware, because it's interesting you're talking about these feelings. One of the things that I have noticed as somebody who grew up in a situation where I had somebody as an alcoholic
Mhm.
that was raising me, like I had, you know, having that experience and then later becoming an alcoholic and then getting sober. It is all of a awareness game at the end of the
Yes.
day, right? And I've noticed that if you fall into that category specifically of a child of an alcoholic, you typically have delayed emotional responses to things.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I've really dove into this personally because this happens to me. I could have something happen. I'll feel a tinge of it, but I won't experience it till 3 or 4 days later. Everybody else has melted down, gotten over it. I'm a week later, stomach. I can't think. I'm having emotional like problems. Like, why am I so short-tempered? Like, I'm at the end of my rope with stuff, right? And I've noticed this is a very strong experience with people who had alcoholism in their family when they woke up because when they grew up, because you can't necessarily express emotions at the time because you interpret as somebody who's a child that it's not safe to do so.
Right.
It's not safe to say
Exactly.
that you're
We
mad,
stuff
right?
them. We stuff
Yes.
them.
And I think then later becoming an alcoholic, that whole thing, that is all about suppressing reality.
Mhm.
No, I'm not drinking myself to death. No, I could drink like everybody else. This isn't a problem. So you're delaying emotional response too, because you're delaying reality, right? And I think people who are in recovery are more really could use this more than the average bear, right?
Yes.
Like, because we're really the people who are affected by this.
Yes. And it's interesting you say that because as I'm reading the book, as I'm going to these listening sessions where we're meditating, we're trying to feel place in the body, all I could think of is, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been working on this for a long time. That's what I've been doing in meditation, doing body scans, understanding, having an awareness of my body. So there are a lot of nuances to it. And like you, I have those delayed emotional responses because we trained ourselves to do that because it was unsafe. What if, when I was a kid and I was rejected by a peer group or a peer, if my mom sat beside me, put her hand here on my chest and said, where are you feeling this? How are you feeling this? Tell me about how your body is responding to this, and getting in touch with our own felt sense early on, as opposed to one, I never shared when that was going on. I just kept my emotions to myself. And that's how I learned to bury and hide things, right? Because maybe it wasn't safe to do that. Or maybe I knew the answer would be just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going.
Yeah,
And
you're
so
right. You're right.
so what I'm trying to do is when my daughter gets upset, I'll say to her, where are you feeling that in your body right now? And she's like, I feel it here, right? And I forget it was we came down on her for something, or, challenged her on something. And she said, I feel it here. I said, oh, do you feel tension? Yes, I do. So just to name it, right? And so that she can create an awareness. And what I've noticed is, well, now she's away at camp for the summer, so I don't, but she's been talking more, right? So she's feeling safe as she's getting more in touch with her own body to just chit chat and talk more and to talk about her feelings, because I'm creating this area. Not that I ever shut her down or whatever, but maybe I did. Like I've always said to her, like if she didn't get a part in the play, well, why don't you go into the sunroom? You can sit there and feel it for a while and you get an hour and then, pull yourself together. Maybe she needed 2 hours or 3 days, right? But I would be like, yeah, feel all your feels, but come on, let's get going too. So to really listen to, respect, and respond to the body in such a way, I'm learning to do it myself. Like I know that I have these feelings about my sister-in-law's passing and I can't access them. So what's blocking it?
You know, I have to tell you, I have to say that I think what we're talking about, look, you're coming from it more of a professional side.
Mhm.
And I will tell you well, let's talk about sobriety and relapse, getting sober and relapse as it relates to this, because I think this is super important to anybody who's out there, no matter how much time you have. I think the inability to interpret what's really going on with your feelings is the number one culprit of relapse.
Okay.
And I'm gonna and let me throw this out there to you, and why I say this, and you might not agree with me on this, but I've seen this over and over again. I used to go, shout out to the Burbank group, a huge old AA group in hardcore AA group in Burbank, California. They had a meeting on Mondays, and the subject of the meeting was a men's crosstalk meeting. And the subject of the meeting, Shauna, was what's really going on. So people were talking about, oh, my girlfriend dumped me, my wife's divorcing me, my employer's firing me. I'm not getting what I need here. My car broke down, right? It was all these topics of life. But the question always, but what's really going on? Well, I'm upset because I'm not feeling acknowledged, or I can't express my feel, right? So there's what's going on, and then there's what's really going on emotionally with us. And I think this is just my own observation from the people that I've worked with to help to get sober, people that are unwilling or unable to ask that question. What's really going on here? Why do I keep walking out of jobs? Why does everybody not like me?
Mm-hmm.
What's really going on, right? Not the people, places, and things of it all, but what's really going on deep down inside. If you're unable to ask that question and get the answer back and work through it, you're in danger of drinking and using drugs again, in my opinion, because that is how addiction gets to people, is through this vehicle, the people, places, and things. But what's really behind it is these emotional feelings that you haven't dealt with.
So I think there's a lot of factors that go into someone relapsing. But if I took what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, like what's really going on, and I applied it to my own life, okay, to my own relapse, what was really going on? I was completely overwhelmed trying to be the perfect Pinterest wife, life, and mother. I was so afraid not to get the recognition of people or being able to keep up with all of the other moms, what they were doing. I was afraid of not making my number. I was in sales. So you're afraid of that every year, no matter
Yeah.
what. But I had had a challenging year as well. And, if you ask me, I was afraid of getting fired. Was I really afraid of it? The reality was I wasn't going to get fired for missing, a quarter or a couple. I'd worked there a long time and I never missed my number. And so I was also telling myself these untruths. Okay. So if someone had sat down with me and said, what's really going on? But guess what, Damon? I didn't see a solution for it. That's what the problem is. Even if I could say I was overwhelmed or I was this or I was that, I didn't see a solution on how to fix it. I was
Well,
lost.
okay. And this comes down to the biggest alcoholic thing, which they found out. Look, in the 30s, when they wrote the big book, lack of power was our dilemma. So there is knowing what's going on, and then just knowing deep down inside that you have no solution like you do. But I would actually challenge you. You're very bold for you to admit that. It's like, hey, I'm not the perfect, I feel like I'm not the perfect Pinterest wife and mom and all that stuff. If you never had gotten to that point where you could identify that that was going on, it would have been always Susie did the Pinterest better than me, or Jane planned that trip better for the kids, or this coworker's, it would have stayed on that level. It would
Right.
have
And
never
maybe
have
it
gone
did.
in.
Like
Yeah.
I'm able to look back with rose-colored glasses or with a different lens now, with more self-awareness. Now I'm able to look back and see what was happening, but I don't know if I had the words back then and could acknowledge it.
Yeah. And I think this is where this biospirituality is good, is starting to identify what does not belong here.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these feelings coming from? Look, people go out, they don't go out, especially people who've been sober, let's say 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They're going out a lot of the times because unchecked feelings run amok,
Right.
unanalyzed, and I had this morning. I got really pissed off about something, and I had to stop myself and say, okay, what's going on here? Like, why? And for me, a lot of the times I've realized it's a frustration of not being able to change things I want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, oh, that's what that is. And I can work on that now that I know what that is. But if I don't know what that is, if I never ask that question, is it just the trash guy came late, or this got knocked over, or this was it, right? If I keep it on that superficial level, I never really get to what's really going on with why I'm having these emotions all the time like this
Right,
displaced
which is why it's really important when you are in a 12-step program that you have a sponsor who you can talk to, that you surround yourself with people, that you do have. We have stuff we have to work through. We need therapists. We need, psychiatrists. We need people to talk to because we might not be able to access that. But here's a soundbite for you, and you can use this all day long. Just what you were saying. Emotional sobriety drives physical sobriety. So until we've figured out the solution, until we've figured out how to turn our life and our will over to the care of a higher power, we are not able to remain emotionally sober. That's why the 12-step program is the entire program is a suggested program of recovery, not just show up and go to meetings, right? That's why you have to go through the whole steps, all of the steps, not just 1, 2, and 3. So here's something really funny about biospirituality, or just about spirituality in general. After my mom passed 5 years ago, I was really in a state, 7 years ago, and I was in my relapse and I could not get sober. I mean, we've talked about this, and I was just always just crying and whatever. And then the shame and the guilt and this bird, I love to bird watch, that I'd never seen before showed up. It's called a summer tanager, and it's red like a cardinal, but it's got blue and green and whatever on it. And I haven't seen it in a couple of years. And just while we're talking, it's sitting right outside this window on the at first glance, you think it's a cardinal because it's bright red, but it's been sitting here and just sitting there listening to us while we're talking. I just thought it was cool.
that is neat.
I love
It's
things
your
like
mom.
that.
It's your mom. It's your
It's
mom
my
coming
mom
back
saying, yeah, you
in
told them
presence.
about
Yeah,
biospirituality. You need to get in touch with your feelings, Shauna.
exactly. I love this. I think really this is the key to a happy sobriety, honestly. There's so many people, and I was one of those people who, had decades of sobriety, but just not really happy, right?
Mhm.
Like not trying, but just not getting there. And I love that you mentioned therapy and these other things. Like, I think having this conversation is so good for you. And if you're listening to this and not having these conversations, you need to get with a posse. This is the whole thing about plugging in. You need to get with a posse that you're frequently having these. And it doesn't need to be an organized 12-step meeting. It could literally be a conversation a week that you have with somebody
Mhm.
via phone or Zoom or in person or coffee. Just having these conversations of the pursuit of asking these questions, I think does a lot for people in sobriety, specifically if they've already worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or gone through another program.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I think in order to have that conversation, though, we have to have enough courage to be vulnerable. And that's what I would challenge everybody is have the deep conversations and don't be afraid. So obviously pick a safe person to have the conversations with and to get deep with, and you'll know if they're safe because you've trusted them with other things. But don't be afraid to get vulnerable and real.
Yeah, I love this. And for me, I think one of the things that I've picked up, in closing, I'd like your opinion on this, is that it was shocking to me as the years have progressed in recovery, how much I don't have power over things. The illusion that somehow, and I fall for this. I'm the sucker that falls for this all the time. I do. I'm just going to admit it's like that I somehow could have made it different, or I somehow could have worked harder on this. And that rarely is the case with me, and I have people in my life that point this out to me all the time. It's like, you need to have a better, deeper conversation about the reality of what you actually have power over,
Mm-hmm.
because we do have the power to ask this question, though. And this is I think the key of this. What I love about what you're talking about is we have the power to ask the question, like, what's going on here? Why am I feeling this? Where is this? Right? Like, but we don't have power over a lot of things. And right now the world just seems like it's spinning out of control. And I'm not the only one. I get texts from people and family members going, it's crazy. Look at the cost of
Mm-hmm.
groceries. It's like, it's tough. Like,
It
people
is
are
tough.
having a really hard
$6
time.
for a pound of butter. Are you kidding me?
Right. Right? Exactly. So right now, I think the thing is that I think we have power over certain things, but we don't have power over other things. And being able to discern that is such a huge gift, which I have not been granted fully yet. I'm going to be honest. Like, this is all about being honest. I'm not there yet, but I'm better every day than I was.
Right. Well, I really do work on that. I think of the hula hoop. What I have control over what's inside my hula hoop, and that's me and how I show up every day and the work that I do and the work that I do to do the work that I do, right? Like work doesn't just happen, clients don't just appear. You have work to do and take care of my family and show up with kindliness, patience, tolerance, and love. And if I can do that and then instill strong values in my daughter, I know that I'm making my own world a good place. And that's all I have control over. And maybe I need to eat a little less butter so that I'm not complaining about $6 a pound butter. But that's beside the point. But the other thing is spending a little more time on the meditation side during prayer and meditation. You know, prayer is talking to God or the higher power. Meditation is listening. And even if you say, I can't meditate, what about listening to your body? What about just sitting there? And that's the biospirituality part. That's listening to your body, listening to God through your body, just putting on some quiet music or doing a guided body scan and really listening. Or on Insight Timer, they have felt sense biospirituality guided meditations called tapping into the felt sense. And it takes you through your body and what you're feeling. And so spending time doing that creates the awareness that we are not alone, right? That we have a relationship with a spiritual being, that someone's got our back. And, you know, that's one of the things I'm so grateful for through the program. I have a faith of my childhood and I love it. But my ability to grow and expand my spiritual experience is really what my 12-step program has given to me.
Absolutely. You know what? That really, it really is. And, you know, it's interesting, you know, and we just had a birthday, I believe, of Alcoholics Anonymous, and a shout out to them, that they knew this even when they didn't know things.
Right.
You know, we
88
know
years
things
ago.
now. Yeah, they knew 88 years ago, knew that, you know, look, you could get sober, you could do all this, but if you didn't work on your spiritual practice, whatever that was, if you didn't pursue deeper,
Mm-hmm.
you were in trouble. And you know, an amazing discovery, right, that we could use in practice today. Shauna, thank you so much. Next week,
Thank
I
you,
guess we'll be
Damon.
coming back out at you guys. Final thoughts here? Final thoughts for this week?
Final thoughts? You know, I don't. Get in touch with yourself. Have the courage and be brave to be vulnerable with other people. You can build trust by trusting first, right? And going forward. So I'm looking forward to, as I get through the courses and the book, to be able to share a little bit more of my insight about the biospirituality, but stay plugged in, that's for sure. And don't
More
hang
to
up
come,
after
guys.
this.
I won't. I won't. Guys, have a great recovered week, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks.
Hey, if you like this episode, think about supporting us by becoming a Recovered Life Plus member. At Recovered Life TV, we're not just delivering premium recovery resources, we're empowering you with the knowledge and tools that make a real difference in the quality of your recovery. By subscribing, you gain access to ad-free content, expert insights, exclusive video and audio segments, special projects, plus so much more, all while supporting our mission to spread the recovery message far and wide. Whether you're seeking to deepen your understanding or stay updated on the latest addiction and mental health recovery trends, Recovered Life Plus is for you. Subscribe now and start living your best recovered life. Just go to recoveredlife.tv and become a Plus member today.